Greetings, Buckeye Nation, and welcome to Dotting the I with Davis and Chad. Buckeye football is back, baby. Part 2. All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to the second part of the show we did last week. Buckeye football is back, baby, and we got a lot of stuff to talk about. From Shaun Wade coming back and Wyatt Davis coming back and the Big Ten releasing their schedule finally.
Yeah, I think we're starting to get a more clear picture of kind of what we're getting ready to expect here in about the next month. Again, a lot of uncertainty still with a lot of the strict protocols that we talked about in the last episode, but this episode, we're mainly going to be focusing on more of a positive focus on a lot of this stuff. We're not going to focus on all the negative or the doubt that's creeping in with, are we even going to have a season, or if we have a season, what's it going to look like? I think the focus of this one is, we're going to get back down to business here. We're going to talk some football, we're going to talk some schedule, and we're going to go from there.
Absolutely, man. I'm pumped up. One of the things I really want to talk about is the two returning stars to our football team and an already awesome roster we have for this year, and that is Wyatt Davis and Shaun Wade. Now, I have to admit that I was a little bit skeptical about Shaun Wade coming back. I think I always knew Wyatt Davis would come back because it was always kind of out there that the door was open for that. Shaun Wade coming back is such a huge thing for kind of captain that defense.
Well, I think that's actually probably the most important return that we had of the two by far. Not that I'm taking anything away from Wyatt Davis. Heck, they even put him in the all-decade team in the Big Ten, and he's still playing football. And that says a lot about, a Buckeye, let alone an offensive lineman. But Shaun Wade was such a key factor in the defense because we lost so much in the defensive backfield. And Shaun Wade's a top 10 pick. I mean, you lose someone that's a top 10 pick and you're leaving your entire defensive backfield as backups last year that, there's no easing into the season, obviously. So we definitely needed that veteran presence, that talent in the backfield there. In the defensive backfield in order to try to, kind of solidify having a solid pass defense as well as a run defense as well.
I think that this whole thing, it feels kind of like destiny to me. I know that sounds stupid. Maybe it does. But it just feels like all the adversity we had to come through, players leaving and then coming back, not having a season, having a shortened season. And now all of a sudden, it just feels like the momentum is our way. And I really feel like, man, when we finally get under center, I think we're going to put a hurting on some people.
No, I agree. I mean, going into this year, I had high hopes. And I think the one thing that gets not necessarily overlooked, but maybe the storyline will be a little understated, is how motivated this team is to get back on the field. And it's not necessarily because the Big Ten canceled our season and because we knew who we had coming back, but it all revolves around that semifinal game last year with Clemson, where we really knew we were the better team. Statistically, almost across the board, we were the better team, and we just took a tough L. And I know that every single person in that locker room, especially including Chris Olave and Justin Fields, wants another crack at it. And that's why they're super motivated. I mean, there was Ryan Day's been kind of doing the circuit now, especially on Fox Sports, since we've gotten the news that we're back. About how amped we are to play and, how are the players taking it and what's practices looking like now. And he said that Justin Fields from the get-go, like opting out was like never even an option for him. Like he knew he had business that was left undone. He's been super motivated this whole time. And I mean, barring we keep him healthy and keep him COVID-free, I mean, he's going to have, dare I say, an even better year than he did last year. I mean, in the regular season, having 40 touchdown passes to 1 interception.
They need to put him in an incubator, like some kind of fresh air room, where he can stay completely healthy all the time.
Well, that's what I mentioned last episode, man. Is like if I'm Ryan Day, I'm looking at these players, especially these key starters, and I'm looking at them saying, "Hey, I don't care what it takes. I will be your personal errand boy, or I will find someone on staff that will get you whatever you need. Like, do not leave the room. Like, I don't care what it takes. Like, if your parents want to come visit and you want some me time, I get that. But man, if you're that motivated to play and we fought this hard to get a season, I'll be damned if, we're going to make some mistakes and end up getting key players that are out for 3 weeks after testing positive.
I think, well, the Big Ten put out the schedule, obviously, this past weekend. I kind of looked at it, and honestly, I was a little bit surprised with the way it starts out. I'm not surprised with the fact that they moved Michigan to the last game. You and I have had conversations about this, kind of torn between tradition and, between our own personal tradition. But starting off with Nebraska, week 1.
Well, I really tried to. It's funny because like I used to have the schedule saved, and for some reason, at the beginning of this year, I didn't save the schedule, even though I know we had Bowling Green to start. We were on the road at Oregon, and then we had Buffalo. Then we started our Big Ten season, but I didn't have the season saved. But I'm almost 98% positive that our Big Ten schedule was actually the exact same schedule we had to begin with, because I know that we had Nebraska at home since we were at Nebraska last year, and I knew we were definitely going to Penn State on the road. I feel like Penn State was probably supposed to be later in the year instead of this early. But as I went through the 8-game schedule for Ohio State, I think this is exactly the same teams in the same home and aways that we were supposed to have in the first place.
Even though I think that we're going to find out a lot about this team in week 1 and 2, being that we have Nebraska at home and then we go to Penn State, I honestly look at this schedule and I look at what we have, and there should be absolutely no problem. I don't feel like there's a problem. I really don't. I feel like Penn State is a great football team, but I really don't feel like they're in the same conversation as an Ohio State.
Well, I think the one thing that is actually going to benefit us is that, and Ryan Day had even mentioned this, and so did Justin Fields in their interviews on Fox, this whole time they've been preparing for a season. They've been optimistic this whole time they've been preparing. I don't know if I can say the same for Nebraska or Penn State or any of these other teams, because Ohio State knew what they had coming back. They knew they had the drive from the tough loss last year at the end of the season. So they're preparing, and they've been preparing. It's not like, all of a sudden someone tells you, hey, we're not going to play, and then some of these players start letting themselves go, and they're not training every day, and they're not lifting every day, and they're not practicing, hard every day. And then all of a sudden you tell them, hey, we're getting ready to get started, and we got a month before games start. Now, sure, that's still maybe enough time to get some practices in, but if you've let your body go, are you really ready to start games in a month?
Probably not. You're not. And, I think some of the lower tiered schools, I hate to say it like that, but, your Rutgers, your Illinois, stuff like that, I think that they are going to have a much tougher time returning to competition, because I think their emphasis at their school just isn't as much on football as it is at, say, an Ohio State or Michigan. So I really think that they're going to be a little bit behind the 8 ball coming back. And I think that, honestly, that could hurt them. And honestly, being in shape, like we talk about, Ohio State's been working. We haven't seen like a ton of contact. And I think what happened like this weekend in the NFL was a pretty good indication of some of the things we're going to see and some of the things that actually worry me. Being in shape is different than being in football shape. It's different than getting hit all the time. And there were just a ton of injuries in the NFL this weekend. And that's kind of one of the things that concerns me, because we haven't really put on the pads and haven't really hit quite a bit yet. You know what I mean? So I think that's going to present a good challenge too.
No, I understand that, and injuries you can never really predict. I always go back to Braxton Miller. One freak accident in practice, threw the ball, writhing in pain. We thought the season was done. You never can really predict these things, but I just, it just feels different, because ever since that loss, and even when hope seemed to be gone, and even when Kevin Warren even came down early, at the beginning of this whole process with the decision and said this will not be revisited, they never quit practicing. They never quit trying. They never quit pushing forward. I can see a lot of other teams, actually, I could probably guarantee you a lot of other teams, took that at face value for what it was, and they were done with their season. So I fully expect that Ohio State is going to come out game 1, and we're not going to see a ton of rust like you would see. I can guarantee you that we're probably going to be the most prepared team in the Big Ten by far, which is one of the big reasons why I think it's really good that we got a couple tough games to start the year, because we're going to be better prepared than these other teams to kind of get some of those weeks in and get, brush the cobwebs off. I mean,
Right.
we get Nebraska at home to start. We go to Penn State game 2, but then after that, man, it's Rutgers at home, at Maryland, Indiana at home, at Illinois. We don't even have to have our B game for any of those games to pull through in a double-digit victory. So I'm not worried about those at all. And then that gets us all the way to at Michigan State, second to last game, and then Michigan at home. I mean, I'm looking at the schedule, and I'm not seeing an L here. And I'm not even, I never see an L any year, and sometimes they sneak up and get you. But to be perfectly honest, knowing what we've prepared for and knowing what we're getting ready to do, if we have this season as it's actually scheduled, I don't see anything even close here.
And also, we kind of look for every year when this thing comes out. There may be some obvious wins and some obvious losses, but, maybe we're coming off a big game and, could have a letdown or something like that. But I just don't see it with this one, the way that it's structured, where we start off hard, then we go easy, then we finish hard. I really don't see much of a drop off there. Do you feel like there's a trap game in there?
If I'm going to even stretch and say there's any trap game, I'll go ahead and say the first game of the season would be a trap game, just simply because it's the first game of the season and everyone's coming out a little bit raw. I mean, we didn't get a spring game. I mean, they've not legitimately hit someone, and I'm not even talking about putting pads on in practice. I mean, I'm talking legitimately hit someone, especially the quarterback, like in practice, even in their live scrimmages. They got the black jersey on. Like, you're not supposed to hit the quarterback. So a lot of these guys have not had hard contact in probably some of the longest stretch that they've ever gone. I mean, barring someone that maybe is redshirted or not played for a year or, recovering from injury. So maybe Nebraska could be a little bit of a trap game, mainly because I can guarantee we're probably going to go into that game as like a 14 to 17 point favorite, maybe even more than that. That could be a little bit of a trap game, but definitely not Penn State, because Penn State has been the one team that's played us the closest. But you also got to think, too, like a lot of people think, oh, Penn State's our biggest rival. Well, in the last 8 games, we're 7-1 against them. So it's not like, they're actually beating us all, the handful of times. They got us that one time on a blocked field goal back in what? Yeah, it was that blocked field goal that they ran back for a touchdown, and they ended up beating us by, 3 points that game? So, I mean...
I think one of the factors also a lot of people aren't thinking about, unless you're a real football head, is, the crowd. There's no crowd at any of the Big Ten stadiums this year. So
you can bet that's going to help us at Penn State, because they normally do it's going to be a night game and it's going to be a whiteout any given year. And usually when we go there, that's usually what gives us fits, or we play bad until the very end and pull it out. Like, I don't care what kind of crowd noise you're going to even try to pump in there. Like, you can't mistake 100,000 fans during a night game, and I'm not even going to guarantee that is a night game.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of wondering, because of the fact that there's no fans, how many night games they're really going to have. I mean, I don't know. Everybody's got a shortened schedule. Everybody's playing less games. I don't know if they're going to try to get more daylight because the season's actually running more into December. Are they going to play the games at noon to try to get it in more of a daylight situation? I love the primetime game. You know me, I'd rather play every game that we have at 3:30, 7, or 8 o'clock, every single one of them. But I just wonder what the structure is going to be like, if they're going to unfold it as the season goes, or whether or not they're going to give us 4 or 5 nooners right off the rip.
I think a lot that kind of goes into account as well there when they pick noon, 3:30, and 7, 8 o'clock games, is they also look to see what other kind of games that week are on the radar in other conferences or big matchups. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the money. It's about the TV contracts, and they're trying to get the most amount of viewers possible. I mean, they know Ohio State is going to view in from all around the country, but they're going to kind of want some regional views and maybe some national views, just because it's the big matchup. I think it's going to also depend upon who's actually playing each week, or what the matchups are in regards to what the other conferences are doing. I'm pretty sure, I thought I saw, even though they've not released any of the times for each of these matchups yet, pretty sure that the Ohio State-Nebraska opener is going to be a noon game. I think that's their focus game, and it's called, the Fox does the big the big noon, the Big Ten noon. I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure that one's going to be a noon game. I would guess that the at Penn State would be at least a 3:30 game, if not an 8 o'clock game, just because traditionally that's actually what it has been with Penn State. Like it's usually not a noon game. I mean, after that, I mean, Rutgers, Maryland, Illinois, Iowa. I mean, I was actually going to be in the spot where Michigan normally would be in regards to, I mean, I think that's Thanksgiving weekend. I'm not exactly sure on those times there, but at this point, we finally have football. I don't think it really matters that much what time we're playing.
When I look at this schedule, the fact that they've already announced that Nebraska's going to be a nooner, or at least we think it's going to be a nooner, and Michigan is as well. Other than that, Penn State is really the only potential night game I see on there. I don't see us playing at night for any of those other matchups.
No, I mean we go to Michigan State, but I feel like the last couple times we've been at Michigan State, they've been a noon game.
Not to mention they're going to be terrible this year. So I really don't think they're going to be
well
in contention.
In Michigan State's defense, we're not getting them until
in their defense. This is a Buckeye podcast.
Well, what I'm saying though is what's going to benefit them is that they're not getting us till their 7th game of the season. So any kinks that they need to work out for the beginning of the year, they're going to get. I mean, they go Rutgers, Michigan, Iowa, Indiana, Maryland, Northwestern. So there's still a really good chance that they're going to be 4-2 when they see us, assuming that they beat Indiana. I would assume they would beat Rutgers and Northwestern and probably Maryland. I think they'd lose to Michigan and Iowa. I mean, they're still going to have a decent record when they finish, when they come play us.
I just think they got a lot going on there from all the fallout from what happened, when D'Antonio left there, and, they got a new coach, a lot of people leaving the program. I just feel like, they got their work cut out for them this year. Not that I don't like Sparty. I think they're one of the stronger teams, or at least they have been, in the last decade or so.
I mean, I don't like Sparty, but, we kind of need them to be good.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, I don't like any of these teams in the Big Ten as an Ohio State fan, but, we need these teams to be good because we need good competition and we need quality wins. I mean, if these teams continue to suck year in and year out, then in essence, we're going to start looking like the ACC.
I have to be honest with you. I am under the radar rooting for Nebraska to win every game except for when they play us. After all they've done for, bringing Big Ten football back and, kind of the steps that they took that nobody else did, I feel like, Nebraska and Ohio State are pretty much responsible for getting this train back on the tracks. And I honestly just would like to see them do well in the Big Ten. They haven't really had like a lot of success. They've made the championship game, but they haven't won anything yet. And obviously I don't want them to win it this year. But I'm just saying I would really like to see Nebraska do well, especially because they got such a raw deal in the scheduling thing. As far as, they're hitting the gauntlet, man. They're getting them all. They got I think it's 4 or 5 top 25 teams in the first 5 weeks or something like that. It's out of control. So I would really like to see them do well this year.
I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. I want to see all the Big Ten teams do well anytime they're not playing us, because I think anything that's going to benefit Ohio State would be for these teams to play well outside of playing Ohio State. Northwestern, I'm sorry, I don't know. I said Northwestern. Nebraska, I keep looking at my schedule here. I see the end. Nebraska, it's funny because, they did whine a lot once the schedule came out, which is kind of redundant considering the fact that we fought so hard to play. I would not complain about any kind of schedule at this point. But, of course, they get Ohio State on the road game 1. Yeah, is that the toughest matchup you could possibly draw game 1? Absolutely. But you know what? Had the schedule never been kicked to the side from the beginning, you were going to play at Ohio State anyways. That shouldn't come as that big of a surprise. But then they go, they got Wisconsin at home. And then a couple games after that, they got Penn State. So there's a very good chance they could be 1-3 after 4 games. They do have a tough 4-game stretch to start the season. So I get that. But you have to think, we're going to be splitting some hairs here with talking about the schedule in regards to what we're happy with, what we're not happy with. At the end of the day, man, we got football, baby.
We got football, and that's what counts. And that's why I was kind of confused when Nebraska was – I heard their AD say something like pretty much need to take it easy on us and, get off us.
Well, they almost feel like they did that intentionally because of the lawsuit against the Big Ten. But listen.
Do you?
Now, I would like to say that they're not being petty. in not doing that. But do you like anyone that's ever done any have you ever done any scheduling before?
I mean, not
Like
for football,
I've
but
I've not done scheduling, but I've assisted ADs in school districts I've taught in with some scheduling, and it's a nightmare because, especially when you have 14 teams in a conference, like there's not 14 teams in high school districts a lot of the time. So you're dealing with a lot of home and aways that you have to fit in between everyone's schedule, and you have to make sure that, well, hey, we get our 6 in division matchups that we're supposed to have. 3 of those got to be home, 3 of those got to be away. And then we have to have our, cross division matchups, which, we have to have one of those home, one of those away. And getting all this stuff to match up, perfectly is not as easy as what it sounds. So I don't really think any of this thing was intentional. Could you maybe reordered them a little differently? Maybe, but at the end of the day, I mean, the schedule was probably pretty close to what it was originally supposed to be, anyways, in the Big Ten.
see, I don't think it was intentional, but I will say that I believe because they got Wisconsin and Minnesota, which are going to be 2 ranked teams probably when we start this off. But to have the 2 crossover games be Ohio State and Penn State, I mean, you couldn't have picked.
Oh, those are by far the 2 hardest crossover games that you could have asked for, with the exception of the other one being Michigan. But, I mean, we don't really know what Michigan's going to be this year. I mean, they have a new quarterback. I've heard a lot of people say that they're comparing him to like a Cam Newton type of quarterback, which is, man, that's a big ask. Who knows? I mean, maybe Michigan could come out hot and they could be the number 2 in the East. I mean, I'm sorry, no one's going to take over the number 1 in the East. No one's going to take over Ohio State until they beat Ohio State. I don't really know where they're going to be at, but I mean, the East is always predominantly been the tougher division, and even though the East may be a little bit down just overall as a whole, or the West is at least strengthened a little bit with, Minnesota being a little bit better. Wisconsin's always kind of there. Iowa's always kind of there. Nebraska trying to improve, in year 3 or 4 of Scott Frost. I think they're starting to even out a little bit, but the problem is Ohio State is just still so much better than everyone else in the entire conference that the East is always going to be lopsided.
It is, and I feel like the reason Ohio State's crossover game, or one of the crossover games, isn't Wisconsin is because I kind of think, although most of the scheduling isn't intentional, I think some of it also is. I think they probably see Ohio State and Wisconsin ending up in the Big Ten championship game, which is pretty much what I think as well. And
that's what everyone's
you don't want to see that game
that's
twice.
That's what everyone's picked through ESPN. But I mean, heck, we played Wisconsin 2 times last year. I mean, we've already played them cross conference several times in the last few years. I mean, the stuff has to rotate. So I'm pretty sure I remember seeing on the original schedule before they went to the conference only one about a month and a half ago that Wisconsin wasn't even on our schedule. So I think, honestly, what these schedules are is what the original Big Ten schedule was supposed to be.
One more point I'd like to bring up is that I kind of wonder how this is all going to shake out when it comes to the playoffs. The reason I'm saying that is because with the shortened schedule now and the 2 crossover games, you have completely taken out, I think you've taken out strength of the schedule on a lot of the stuff because there's no out-of-conference test. There's no anything else. You can't say, oh, well, you went to Texas and beat them, or you went to USC and beat them. Now it's everybody beating up on everybody. So like you said, maybe Nebraska, you know what I mean? Maybe Nebraska loses to Ohio State. Maybe they beat Penn State. Maybe we beat both of them. You know what I mean? Which one is a better team? What is considered a good loss or a good win now when you have everybody playing everybody?
I think this year more than any other year with the CFP, it's going to have to go upon the eye test. And that's why I think Ryan Day needs to be telling his team, every single team we play, we need to be running up the score as much as we can. We already know that, from that interaction that Ryan Day had with Jim Harbaugh, a month ago, he said he's going to run the score on him. He's going to try to score 100 on him. I think he needs to be doing that. I think he needs to be doing that with every single team. The one thing that does help us a little is we did have that preseason rank, which they went ahead and included the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. And we knew that Ohio State was ranked number 2, and they had, 20, 30 some first place votes. Did you see the latest coaches poll that came out that re-included the Big Ten? Did you see where we're at?
I think it was at 10.
10. Are you kidding me? Like, you really think just because we decided not to play, and these other teams, some of these other teams still haven't even played. Now that we're back, we go from 2 to 10?
Yeah,
Like,
I don't
really?
know.
Now, don't get me wrong. Like, the coaches poll is irrelevant because the poll that matters is the CFP poll. So it doesn't matter what the AP says or what the coaches poll says. It's what the CFP says. You know, at least to begin the year in that preseason rank, I think we had what, six teams that were in the top 25.
Right.
So at least there's a little bit of kind of a like a baseline that we can start with, or at least people can kind of start with to kind of give an idea of maybe roughly what our strength of schedule might look like. But again, everyone knows that the preseason ranks don't mean anything. I mean, outside really of the top 10, it's kind of a guessing game. And even inside the top 10, I mean, I feel like there was a stat I read probably a couple of years ago that every single year a team that's preseason ranked inside the top 10 finishes the season unranked. But it's like one. So, I mean, at the end of the day, for the most part, I mean, I could sit here and tell you who the best 4 teams in the country are, because even there's a little bit of rollover with some of the key players. I could tell you who the best 4 are, and it's going to be Oklahoma. I'll give / Texas with that one, but then it's going to be Alabama. It's going to be Clemson. It's going to be Ohio State. And there's nothing that you can tell me in recent memory, especially with who we know is coming back on all these, or the recruiting rankings, that's going to be any different.
I just wonder what all is going to play a factor in that. If they are going to go to the eye test. Number 2, are they going to explain the criteria this year because it's a weird year? And number 3, I wonder if, because the Big Ten is playing an abbreviated schedule, I wonder if they're going to keep us out till the end. Meaning, I wonder if we won't crack the top 4, even if we should be there, until the Big Ten championship game is over for the final CFP.
I think that's actually a really good question and something that I've actually considered. And I think another thing, too, that kind of matches that is the fact the coaches poll put us all the way back at 10th without even playing a game, even though the SEC hadn't played a game. But they still have Alabama up there, number 1, I think? I think they still have Alabama as number 1, even though Clemson's already played 2 games and they have Clemson at 2 or Clemson at 3 or somewhere weird like that.
I just can't believe that you would think that there'd be that big of a fall off. So you had us 2 a couple of weeks ago, and now we're 10. Is that just because – that's what I want to know. Is that just because we're playing less games, so you're punishing us for it? Or is it because
I can tell you who right now voted not in our favor, and that was Dabo Swinney. I mean, if there's been anyone in the media that has been the biggest chicken shit, and you can blurt that out, of this entire thing, it has been Dabo Swinney. Not once has he said, man, I really hope Ohio State gets in. I want to play him again. That was a great game. I'm looking forward to it. I really hope they get a chance. No, this whole time he's like, well, I don't think the Big Ten should get a chance since they're not playing on time. Or I don't think they deserve a chance to play. I mean, he's been anti Ohio State, basically. When I say Big Ten, it's Ohio State, getting into the playoff this entire time. And I told you, I might even have mentioned it maybe on our first one or two podcasts that, I think he knows that we are the better team. He knew we were the better team last year. And even though they have Trevor Lawrence coming back and their starting running back who decided not to go, I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Etienne.
Yeah, Travis Etienne. They have a stellar 1-2 punch there. Our defensive line pretty much had our way with their O-line. Their defense didn't really do much to stop us. I mean, we stopped ourselves in that game. We had penalties. We had 2 drop passes in the red zone for touchdowns that we had to end up taking field goal. I mean, had we played our A game with no mistakes, we would have beat them by 20 that game. So I know that we have a lot coming back. Like he's such a little weasel. Like, I used to maybe respect him a little bit early on, and I kind of like the way he coached, and he's, real players coach and all that. But man, he's just a little weasel. Like, behind closed doors, like he's doing every little thing he can to try to like belittle someone else and make himself look better. And I just, I've really hopped off any bandwagon I ever was with trying to be a fan of him as a coach, because he'll say one thing to the camera and then he'll, kind of act one way the other way. And I'm not a big fan, but I can guarantee him on top of, some other people that are Ohio State haters. I mean, it's a human poll and it's a coach's poll. And there's going to be people that negatively are going to vote where the Big Ten should be because they, one, either dislike the conference or dislike Ohio State, or two, because they feel like, we're coming in late to the game and we're not going to have as many games, that we should be penalized for that.
And, trying to play the devil's advocate here, hindsight being 2020, I may feel that way too. If I was ACC or somebody like that that's playing or Big 12 that's playing a full schedule, I would be pissed off. I would be pissed off if I was Oklahoma or something like that. It comes down to Ohio State and Oklahoma, and say we're 9-0, or say we're even 8-0 because a game gets canceled or something like that. But somehow they manage to squeak through their entire season and maybe lose one game. Let's say lose a game somewhere. So they've got 11 wins and a loss, and we got 8 wins. I would be pissed off. I would be pissed off if Ohio State gets in over me. I mean, just to be honest.
Right, but there's one conference now that is not playing that is most likely not going to get consideration unless something miraculously happens in the next couple weeks, and it's the Pac-12. So that argument really shouldn't be important unless you find yourself not winning your conference and being a one-loss team, because there's 4 big conferences. So if Oklahoma wants to be mad about it, or if someone in the SEC or Clemson or anyone wants to be mad about it, I would tell them, hey, win your conference then. Pretty much you win your conference with 1 loss or less in those other 3 conferences, you're in. So if you want to complain and worry about what Ohio State's doing, win your conference. Because pretty much from this year, what it looks like is as long as you win your conference with 1 loss or less, you're in. Now in the Big Ten situation, with the limited number of games and the possibility to lose. So if they want to keep complaining, I get it if, there's a 1-loss team in those conferences that didn't win their conference, would they have an argument against a Big Ten championship or a Big Ten champion that has 1 loss? I can understand a little bit of that argument, but at the same time, you didn't win your conference. You took an L. So anyone that wants to complain, and I'm always a big proponent of this, man, and as long as you know me, it's just win your games. If you win them all, you have nothing to complain about. If you've lost somewhere along the road, you've had a hiccup, then you're putting your destiny or, whatever your future is in someone else's hands.
Unless you're in the SEC.
Don't lose a game. Don't lose a game.
But the SEC is such a gauntlet, Davis. That's why they can still lose. It's so tough. That's why they don't have to schedule out of conference games. That's why they can schedule Citadel in the 8th game of the season, lose a game somewhere in the championship game or something like that, and still get in.
Yes, I agree that it's more of a gauntlet than any other conference, but I don't think it's as quite the gauntlet as everyone expects. If we really want to pull up each and every single team, you're going to sit here and tell me that it's as big of a gauntlet as everyone thinks. They say SEC football doesn't matter who you play each and every week, you're going to be tested. Really, you're going to say that, about teams especially lately, Tennessee's not been great, Ole Miss not been great, Kentucky's just been a 500 team, Texas A&M has been maybe a little bit better than 500. LSU's going to end up probably being a little bit down this year. Arkansas is awful. There's several teams that I can list. It's not the gauntlet where every single game, you're being tested. I will give them this. They're a little more top heavy. They have a little more depth up top, but it's not like the severe gauntlet everyone's putting on it to be. And I think a lot of that has just been media driven, SEC driven, or ESPN driven for a long time. Now, I still will sit here and say begrudgingly that the SEC has probably been the best football conference in the better part of the last 2 decades, just in regards to consistency and the amount of teams up top that are, top 25 teams. I will definitely give them that. But you can't sit there and tell me that you're going to go through a 10-game conference season in the SEC and you're going to be lucky to pull out 5-5 because it's a gauntlet. Come on. Maybe there's 3, 4 at best teams on your schedule that are going to be super competitive that you got to navigate through. At the end of the day, man, okay, I'll give them this. The SEC with 1 loss and not winning a conference title is going to get the nod over any other conference 1-loss non-conference champ. I understand that because they do have more top heavy and they are the better conference, but you can't sit there and tell me a team that's not won their conference gets to go in over a team from another conference that has won their conference. Even though, unfortunately, we have seen that with Alabama getting in, not even going to their championship game, and Ohio State winning the Big Ten and not getting in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but again, that just backs up my claim, too, that, a lot of this is media driven and perception driven, that the SEC is the best, and you lose one there, don't even get your conference championship game. You're better than any other one-loss team, guaranteed, bar none. It doesn't even matter who you won or who you lost to.
Right.
So there's a little bit of unfairness in there, and that's one thing I'm tired of hearing about with this SEC bias is how, we come play in our league and, you'd have 4 losses. Like, are you serious? Like, you can say that to a lot of teams, but I'm not 100% buying that entirely. Like, I'll give them this. They are super competitive, especially at the top. But it's like almost a given. Like, it's not even. It's almost like a criteria saying, hey, the SEC loses one game. Any of these other conference players lose one game. And the favor goes to the SEC. We're not even going to look at the rest of it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I felt this way for a long time about the SEC, man, and just the way. I mean, yeah, it's top heavy, and they get some good teams in there. But I would put Ohio State against any one of those teams. I would, and even on years we're not talking about like today. I would love to play Alabama. I would play Alabama. That's why I was really excited when they did the home and home, even though I can't remember what year it is, but I'm sure Saban probably be dead by then.
Yeah, I think it was like 2087.
Something like that. But he'd probably still be coaching. Who knows? But I would love to see that happen eventually, where we can start scheduling a little bit more of them, so we can prove that. I mean, that's the way you do it. Let's schedule them in non-conference, and play them. And also, I've always been a big fan of scheduling like a Houston, a Boise State, Utah, somebody like that, like kind of the up and comers in the of the smaller schools.
Hey, real quick, right off the top of your head, month out, what's your prediction for Ohio State in the season?
Overall record?
Yeah, I mean for the Big Ten, do you see a slip up in there? Do you predict any loss?
Honest, people are probably gonna roll their eyes when I say this. We're gonna be 9-0, and we will win every game by 2 scores.
And I'm taking you probably picking us against Wisconsin in the championship game.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's the 9th game. 9-0 by 2 scores and everything. I'm telling you, the talent level is just on another level this year. This is it, man. And I never say that. This is the year right here. If we get to play all the games, barring injury and COVID-19, I'll see you in the Final Four.
Yeah. And I am... God, man, we've agreed way too much in this show. Anyone that knows us knows that we argue about this stuff all the time. We're never on the same page, but I guess that's 2020 for you, isn't it? But I'm going to say the same thing. I think we roll this schedule, and I think it's a double-digit victory all the way through. I don't think anyone gets within 10 points of us. I'd say we probably end up going in as probably the number 3 or 4 seed just because we're going to have less games. And it's going to be a Clemson or Alabama matchup.
I think so, and I'm looking forward to it. I'll be counting the days.
Yep, I hear you, brother.
All right, well, real quick, Davis, let everybody know where they can listen to us and where they should check us out.
Okay, so again, follow us on Facebook. We got a page rolling there. We put a lot of good content out there, as well as our most updated podcasts when they're released. We have a YouTube page that you can go find us. Make sure you subscribe, like the videos, and hit the notification bell so you can find out when we're putting stuff up. And we're also newly out on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and I also believe iHeartRadio. So go ahead and check us out and let us know what you think. And guys, we appreciate your support.
And we will see you guys next week.
Go Bucks. OH.